Alright, hey guys. So what we're going to get started is the first part of our lecture about form and value. So we're going to take our ruler and our pencil and what we're going to start by doing is making two identical rectangles. So 5 by 6. So what we're going to do is at the very top of our paper, we're going to measure an inch. So I'm going to come over and put an inch mark. Now I'm going to come over and I'm going to measure 6 inches. And these become what I'm going to work within. My 1, double check that I did the top right. Okay. And then I'm going to grab my 6 and come over 6. So now that I've done that, I can connect these guys all the way down. Now from the top of that line, I can come in at an inch, and then at my inch, I can come down and measure 5. And then from that spot down, I can measure, again, 5. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Line up my 0, measure my 1 inch, move it, measure my 5, move it again, and measure my 5. Now, if you're wanting to do that all in one go, you have to do some math, right? So 1 inch. Then we need a 5-inch block. 1 plus 5 is 6, so mark 6. And then 6 plus 5 is 11. So that's how you could do those another way. Then what we're going to go ahead and do is make those lines into our boxes. So across, across, and our last one, pull across. So now we have 2 rectangles that are 5 by 6. So we have rectangle 1, rectangle 2. All right, so now what we're gonna do is do our contour line drawing on both of these of our shapes. So one of the things that you can do is we learned how to use a grid. And what I'm gonna do is just come in and mark my halfway point and then my quarter points along the outside. This is for when I make imaginary lines with my head, like within my head, to tell me where everything's at. Those look off. 5. Aha, there's our culprit. 5. So as you can see, everyone makes mistakes. So if you make a mistake, you can just come in and very easily correct it. There we go. And then I bet this one is going to be a little bit off as well. There we go. Okay. Now that I've got that fixed, I can come in and find my center, my 1 1/4, my 4 1/4. All right. I do the same thing with my sides. 2 1/2. 2 1/2. And this just gives me some of those imaginary lines to work with. So when I look in my picture, what I'm gonna see is that I can start in about the center with a dot from my cube. From there, what I can do is draw out into this kind of Y shape. And I'm gonna notice that it only comes up maybe a quarter of the way. And it maybe only comes over a little bit of the way too. So now I've got my lines in. Come in and erase those out. for my middle cube, that really big one. Now I'm going to bring down my cube. So maybe right around here. I'm going to shorten those up a bit. There we go. And I can start and look and see where my cylinder is. So one thing I notice is that about halfway is where that shadow point starts, and that makes a line like this that meets up and curves with my cylinder. And then this line kind of comes around and ends up making a little triangle back here with my cube. So I've got that line for the shadow, and I've got this shape that comes and makes this little triangle right here. I can come in, correct that shape, and then back here, this starts to come up, and this line comes out behind and over. So now I've got the cube shape there, and this will be in shadow. This comes up, and the top circle of the cube, sorry, cylinder, not cube, almost touches. I can bring that down and around. And now I have the top of my cylinder, and I can erase those extra lines that took me straight up. All right. Now I can come down here and start to look at that circle. So the circle ends up cutting off part of my bottom. So if I were to draw in the rest of this cube, right, it might look something like this. Maybe this comes in a bit more. This goes like this. So you can see I can start relating the shapes to each other to figure out where they go. So now this cube gets cut off down here, and there's this little shape that would be made if it did continue. So I can erase that and leave that part of my circle to come back to later. This comes over maybe a little less than halfway before it interrupts the line with that shorter cube. It just comes up a little bit before coming back and up quite a bit. And then I have this little shape in here, just the tiniest little triangle that gets made, and that's going to help me figure out that angle here. So I looked at this shape that gets made right there. Now I can copy down these lines because we know that they're going to be parallel. And over. And then I can erase the lines of the cube that go behind it and disappear. All right, now I can move this way, and I can see that my pyramid starts right next to, but there is a little line there, the cube, and it's come up to a point that's even with my cube. So I can come over, make that point there, and bring it down. And now I can double check in this shape here that maybe this far down is where that line continues straight all the way across. In here, so I'm going to lightly put in that line the rest of the way. So now I've got that in. Now I'm going to bring this down. Actually, I'm going to come down here first. I'm going to drop this part of my cube down. Drop this part down. And then drop this down quite a ways to make this negative shape back here. So I'm going to push that over and that back to get my cube, which looks a little off. So what I can do is come in and shape it up a little bit more. Until it looks a little bit more like the cube it's supposed to look like. There we go. And now, about halfway up the side of the cube is where my pyramid comes out. Maybe about to there. Connect my pyramid. And then this gets pushed back to make a triangle like that. And then that edge comes up as well. We'll go in and erase out the lines there. And add that desk line or horizon line in the back. So now I can start to look over here at my circle and make sure that this shape goes in. So this is going to come down to meet around with the bottom of my cube. And it's going to come over and up quite a bit. Maybe do around there. If I measure it, the circle is about as wide as my cube. So I measure that now. And there we go. Erase out that center mark. And now I have my circle in there. And the edge of my circle doesn't even hit here yet. But I know that my square is going to want to line up. So I might come in and actually shrink up my cylinder a bit. And bring that down so I can move everything over here. Over. So erase all this out. So again, I say this a lot of art is drawing and redrawing. So don't forget that it's fine to do a light drawing and then come back and erase it as needed. So now maybe I'll push this over just a little bit and drop this down, and then that goes over here and pushes back that way. All right. So now I've got my cylinder where I need it. And my cube where I need it. Now I'm gonna make my sphere just the tiniest bit bigger to make sure that my cone can make this shape back here. This little negative space, and this comes all the way up till about there. And then it's going to come out right around here and over. Before coming down, and I can erase that line out. And now I've got the first part of the contour outline done. I can go in and check for these negative shapes by putting in my shadows. Making sure that those look good. Bring my circle around down here. And then my circle over here as well for that shadow. I'll come up here and put it in. And now I've got to know my shadow lines too. So the next step is to do the same thing but down here. You guys have already watched me draw it once, so I want you guys to do the same thing. We're making the same drawing twice, and I'll catch you back in a second. So I actually changed my mind. I am going to let you guys watch me draw the second one, and that's because I'm going to do some tricks that I didn't really think of. So if I know that I want everything almost in the same spot, I can do my up and down cross marks and find out where I put all of the edges of these shapes. I just need to make sure that I'm keeping my ruler nice and straight when I do it. All right, and then I know that this is a little bit above halfway. So I can go in and put in that horizon line on there too. And now that I've got these kind of guidelines in for where everything's gonna copy over, now I can kind of start to put in these shapes. So I know that this line here, which I didn't really draw in very well, is going to be the corner of my square. It's going to come over to about right here and then about right here. So I can draw in my cube to match it. And I can always use my ruler to figure out which guideline I was working with. So I know that right here is where my cylinder starts. And it starts over pretty much parallel. And then that line comes up behind that line. And then this is going to carry over to this line over here, which starts up maybe about here is where this line comes in. I can come in and create that shape for my cylinder, and then come up here and do my top. And then I just might want to adjust some of the angles that I might have gotten wrong and fix that up a little bit and make sure that it's looking like my photo. Then I can come in and erase my guidelines out of here. Another thing you guys can do is just for good practice, don't do what I'm doing now, and just try drawing it for a second time. Alright, so I've got my lines in here that come down until my circle, which starts a little bit over a quarter of the way. So, comes down, and let's just draw in this cube that I'm making. Go. Bring that over just a little bit. There we go. So now I've got the cube I'm working with. And I can come in and take out for that circle. That comes down quite a ways. I know my circle's gonna end right around here, so I can come in and find that shape. Now it's gonna start right around here. Come in and erase those lines to give us our circle on the inside. And again, after I've kind of used my grid lines to get it around in the same place and the same size, I'm still coming in and looking at my photo and seeing what I need to tweak based off it. I'm going to get rid of these lines in here. Go back up my reference image. All right, so now I know that this guy's about 2/3 of the way up over here, and I want it to hit right around in here. So now I could line those 2 points up and draw them in and make sure that I'm still getting this shape in here, which I am. Bring over. I know that it's going to end over here on this side, and now I can line this up and draw that in. So now I've got my cone in the same spot. I can erase out some of those lines and then carry this a little bit darker over here. And I can go ahead and put in my shadow. There we go. Over here, bring my shadow down and around. And I'm going to start in with my cube over here. So I know that this line here, there we go, is about where I want to start. So I'm going to bring it up. This line in here comes to right around here, so I'll bring that over. It does look like it should be a little bit longer, so I'm going to push this back a bit. Trace that out. And then the angle I'm working with, I can slide right down, bring that in, and then double check that this shape in here is the shape that I want, and it is. Now I can copy this line over here. And I can get in my cube, which that line might be a little off since I want it to come over here. And then maybe push this one back just a bit more. Bring this guy over. There we go. Now I've got my cube in there. Now I can come in and draw my shadow off of this guy and get it in the right place. And now I can come off here up to the same point, come in and find where this one is. So I'll come off here over to that point and then down, push this back and down. And go back in, erase out all those guidelines, and now I know that I have a fairly accurate drawing for both of them that are pretty similar. So using all these guidelines I put in is a great thing to do, even if you're just copying off of a drawing, or if you're doing observational drawing, you can hold up your ruler and compare things that way. All right. So now that I've got this, this portion of our video is done. We can begin to move into the next part, which we'll pick up in our next video.